The forest always had a way of swallowing sound, as though the trees themselves were conspiring to keep secrets. It was late September when 5 friends decided to venture into the Black Hollow Woods, a sprawling expanse of wilderness notorious for its dense thickets and twisting trails. They weren't naive. They'd read the warnings, seen the old missing posters tacked to the ranger station's wall, but they shrugged it off as folklore meant to scare tourists. The leader of the group, Mark, insisted that people only vanished if they weren't careful, and they prided themselves on being prepared campers. Alongside Mark was his younger sister Lily, her boyfriend Jason, their childhood friend Emily, and finally Ryan, the quiet one who rarely spoke unless spoken to. They carried heavy backpacks filled with supplies, tents, ropes, water purifiers, and enough canned food to last a week. The plan was to spend 3 nights out there, deep in the woods, far from the noise of the town, and maybe prove to themselves that Black Hollow's reputation was nothing but a myth. The first day passed uneventfully. The sky was a flawless blue, the trees alive with golden leaves preparing to fall, and the air crisp but not yet cold. They hiked for hours, laughing, taking pictures, teasing one another whenever someone tripped on a root or slipped on damp leaves. By nightfall they had set up camp near a shallow stream, pitched 2 tents and built a small fire. They sat around the flames, eating marshmallows, sharing stories, and listening to the occasional hoot of an owl or crackle of branches far beyond the firelight. No one admitted it aloud, but each time the forest groaned or whispered with the wind, they glanced nervously into the shadows. The second day began with more hiking, deeper into the woods, guided only by Mark's compass and a map he'd bought from the ranger station. But Black Hollow wasn't like other forests. The deeper they went, the less the map seemed to match their surroundings. Streams appeared where none should be, paths twisted in circles, and the tall pines looked eerily identical no matter which direction they faced. Emily was the first to suggest turning back, but Mark brushed her off, insisting he knew where they were. The group pressed on until late afternoon, when exhaustion finally set in and they set up camp in a small clearing. That night, the wind was harsher, and the fire seemed weaker despite the dry wood. Everyone huddled closer together, unease settling over them. Around midnight, Jason swore he heard footsteps circling the camp. He grabbed a flashlight, shined it into the woods, but saw nothing except the endless trees swaying. The others teased him for being paranoid, though none of them slept well after that. On the 3rd morning, Ryan was gone. At first they thought he had gone to gather water from the stream or relieve himself in the bushes, but when an hour passed with no sign of him, panic began to spread. His backpack was still in the tent, his boots by the fire, and his jacket neatly folded beside the sleeping bag. It was as though he had simply vanished into thin air. Mark tried to keep everyone calm, suggesting Ryan might have wandered off and gotten lost. They spent the entire day searching, shouting his name until their throats were raw, but the forest absorbed their cries, giving back nothing but silence. As dusk approached, they stumbled upon something chilling. Near a cluster of rocks about half a mile from camp, they found a single footprint bare deep in the mud, as though pressed with unusual force. But Ryan had been wearing boots when they last saw him. No one wanted to admit what they were thinking, that something had taken him, but the fear in their eyes betrayed them. That night, no one slept. The fire burned low, and every snapping twig made them jump. At some point past midnight, Emily whispered that she saw movement between the trees, a figure, tall and thin, darting just beyond the glow of the fire. Jason grabbed a stick and ran toward the edge of the clearing, but when his flashlight beam cut through the dark, there was nothing there. Still, the feeling of being watched was undeniable. The following morning, they decided to abandon the trip and head back toward the ranger station. But the path they had marked with ribbons was gone. The trees seemed to have shifted overnight, rearranging themselves into an unfamiliar pattern. Mark's compass spun aimlessly, the needle twitching back and forth. Panic set in as they realized they were lost. Hours of walking led them only deeper into the woods, and every landmark looked both familiar and strange at the same time. By evening they were exhausted, frightened, and desperate. They set up camp again, though none of them had the heart to gather wood for the fire. The forest grew unnaturally silent as the sun dipped below the horizon, the kind of silence that pressed on their ears. Lily began to cry softly, clutching her brother's arm, whispering that they should never have come here. Then, in the dead of night, the sound returned. Footsteps, deliberate and slow, circling the camp. Jason stood, flashlight trembling in his hand, and shouted into the dark. The light flickered over the trees, and for a fraction of a second they all saw it. A tall, gaunt figure standing between the trunks, pale as bone, its eyes glinting like wet stones. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, but the terror it left lingered like a sickness. No one dared move. They huddled together, whispering prayers, waiting for dawn. When the sun finally rose, Emily was gone. Her sleeping bag was unzipped, her backpack untouched, her shoes resting beside the tent. It was the same as Ryan. She had simply disappeared without a trace. Lily screamed, demanding they leave immediately, but where could they go? Every direction led them deeper into the forest. Their food supplies dwindled, their water nearly gone. Mark's face grew pale and hollow, no longer the confident leader who had convinced them to come. Jason, once hot-headed, now walked in silence, his eyes darting nervously at every sound. By the 5th day their bodies ached, their minds frayed, and their hope dissolved into despair. It was Lily who noticed the carvings first. Strange symbols etched into the bark of trees, spirals and jagged lines, all pointing toward some unseen destination. The more they walked, the more symbols appeared, until it seemed the entire forest was marked with them. They followed the carvings without speaking, drawn to them as though compelled. By late afternoon, they reached a clearing none of them remembered passing before. In the center stood a stone circle, ancient and moss-covered, the rocks slick with dampness. At the heart of the circle was a shallow pit filled with ash and bones. Some looked animal, but others were too large, too human. Lily collapsed to her knees, sobbing, while Jason cursed under his breath, demanding they leave at once. But as they turned, they saw it again. The figure standing at the edge of the clearing, watching silently. Closer now, its face pale and stretched, mouth fixed in an unnatural grin. Mark threw a rock at it in desperation, but the figure didn't flinch, it simply vanished into the trees. That night, they tried to stay awake, but exhaustion overtook them one by one. When morning came, only Mark and Lily remained. Jason was gone, his flashlight lying broken on the ground, his sleeping bag empty. Lily clung to her brother, begging him to take her home. Mark promised he would, though his own eyes betrayed his doubt. Together they stumbled through the forest, guided by nothing but desperation. The trees seemed to close in tighter with every step, branches clawing at their clothes, roots tripping their feet. Hours passed, the sun barely visible through the thick canopy. Just when Lily thought she could go no farther, they saw something, a cabin. Small, weathered, its roof sagging but unmistakably real. They rushed toward it, hope blooming in their chests. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and rot. The floor was littered with broken furniture, and cobwebs hung from the rafters. But what made their blood run cold were the photographs nailed to the walls. Dozens of them. Old, faded pictures of people, campers, hikers, children standing in the forest, smiling. Among them were faces they recognized. Ryan, Emily, Jason. And in the background of every photo, hidden in the trees, was the same figure. Lily screamed, tearing the photos from the walls, while Mark tried to calm her, though his own hands shook violently. Then came the footsteps, heavy and deliberate, outside the cabin. The door creaked open, though no one touched it. The figure entered, stooping to fit beneath the frame, its eyes gleaming, its smile stretching impossibly wide. Mark shoved Lily behind him, clutching a broken chair leg like a weapon. But the figure didn't attack. It simply raised a hand, long fingers curling in a beckoning gesture. Lily clung to her brother, whispering for him not to go, but something in Mark's eyes shifted. As though entranced, he took a step forward. The figure turned and walked into the trees, and Mark followed. Lily screamed his name, begged him to stop, but he never looked back. Within moments both were gone, swallowed by the forest, and Lily was alone. For 2 days she wandered aimlessly, her cries echoing through the trees. The forest offered no escape, no mercy. Her food ran out, her body weakened, and her mind began to unravel. On the 3rd day, hikers passing through the edge of Black Hollow Woods found her stumbling barefoot onto the road. Her clothes were torn, her skin scratched and bruised, her eyes wide with terror. She muttered incoherently, repeating the same words over and over. It took them all. Rescuers scoured the forest for weeks, but no trace of Mark, Jason, Emily, or Ryan was ever found. The campsite was discovered, the cabin too, but the photographs were gone, as though they had never existed. The stone circle was noted in reports, but the pit was empty, nothing but cold ashes remaining. To this day, Lily never speaks of what she saw in those woods. She lives quietly, far from Black Hollow, though at night she still wakes screaming. And the locals whisper that the forest still waits, patient and hungry, ready for the next group of campers foolish enough to test its secrets. Some say the figure is a spirit, a guardian of the woods. Others claim it is something older, something that feeds on the lost and the fearful. But one thing is certain, once you step too far into Black Hollow, you never truly leave. The forest remembers you. It keeps you. And sometimes, if you listen closely at night, you can still hear the footsteps circling just beyond the firelight, waiting, watching, smiling.